Good afternoon and welcome, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Are your email practices fresh? New ways to reinvigorate your email marketing campaigns. My name is Marla Dockery and I am the Director of Partner Programs at Avectra, and I will be the moderator for today's session. Please note that today's webinar is being recorded and all participant lines will be muted during this session. Today's presentation will last approximately 60 minutes and includes a specific question and answer segment at the end. You may, however, submit questions at any time during today's presentation. To enter a question, simply type your question in the Q&A pod in the lower right-hand corner. Our session today will be led by Ron McGrath. He is one of the original founders and now HighRoad's Chief Technology Officer and specializes in bringing integrated messaging solutions to the association nonprofit market. I'll go ahead and turn the webinar over to you, Ron. The audience is all yours.
Thank you, Marla. I appreciate it. Well, appreciate everyone joining our webinar today. Our goal today is to give you some new ideas to kind of kickstart your email marketing program and also to review some of the other best practices you should always be following. So again, these are best practices you can apply to any email platform that you're using, so it really is platform agnostic. For starters, one of the key things to be able to kind of implement the best practices I'm going to be covering is making sure that you do have a really robust, tight integration in NetForm. It's just very difficult to execute on some of the ideas I have in the presentation unless you have this in place. And so from an integration perspective, what you want is basically a platform that has an integration in NetForm so that all data starts and ends in NetForm. And the key thing there is that you're syncing data from your NetForm environment into your platform, your email platform that you're using to launch the emails. This is going to be really critical in terms of sending out very targeted, focused emails. You'll launch the emails from the email platform. Your recipients will receive those emails, and at any time, individuals' preferences change, so you want them to have the ability to quickly change their communication preferences with your organization. The way that most providers do that is there will be a footer in the a link in the footer of the email that allows them to click on a link that says update their preferences. That will actually load a preference center. You want that preference center to be integrated with NetForm, meaning that when it comes up, it's pulling the communication preferences directly from NetForm, allowing the recipient, the member, the constituent, to change their preferences and then updates that back in NetForm in real time. So it's really important to have this end-to-end integration to execute on some of the ideas I'm going to cover. The other important piece is you definitely want to be writing reporting data back from whatever email platform you're using into the NetForm database so that you can leverage those analytics in terms of basically seeing who's engaging in what communications and also using that in terms of assessing someone's total engagement across the board. So these are important things you want to look at when you're integrating the email platform with NetForm. One of the pieces I talked about is syncing customer records from NetForm. The reason that this is going to be very important is obviously it's going to alleviate a lot of your staff from having to move this data back and forth. But one of the key things about email marketing is study after study will show you that smaller lists outperform larger lists. And that's because targeted emails get higher engagement. And so it's really important that you're syncing not only fields so that you can personalize your emails, but a ton of segmentation from NetForm. There's a ton of demographics in the NetForm database, and you want to leverage that, be it pulling over committee information, mailing lists, events that people have attended. These are all important elements in terms of sending out a very focused and targeted email. So once you have all this data accessible and then you can send out these focused emails, the thing you want to start thinking about is building out your content. And so my presentation kind of flows in terms of the integration I showed. The first thing is getting data into an email platform. And now the next thing is to start to think about the message you're going to send out. So when you start to build out your content in your newsletters, the first thing you want to think about is the screen real estate that we call above the fold. This is actually how much of the email the recipient's going to see before they have to scroll. And so it's very important that you take advantage of this screen real estate and make sure that your call to actions are above this area. If your recipient has to scroll to get to the call to action, you're less likely to get them engaged. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we cover exactly how members consume emails. So this is important, making sure that you're leveraging this area above the fold. There are some great tools out there. A tool that we use here as an email service provider is a tool called Litmus. And so one of the things about the presentation, which we'll make available, is I've put a lot of links here to some of these tools and best practices I'm referencing. So Litmus is not an email provider. They don't launch emails, but it's one of the tools that a lot of email service providers use in terms of troubleshooting templates, making sure they look good. And they have a couple pieces of functionality that I really enjoy and my team uses. One is they have these rendering reports that basically allow you to test and see how your email is going to look in the top 40 email clients. That includes desktop, web-based email clients, and mobile devices, iPhones, Blackberries, iPads. And not only can you see how they look on these mobile devices, you can actually scroll around just to make sure that your email renders properly. And so it's really, really powerful. So Litmus is a great tool that your organization could start to leverage. It's very, very fairly priced and something that I encourage you to take advantage of or take a look at. Also here is a great video that kind of gives a high-level understanding of how email clients work and how they interpret HTML. And this will really kind of empower you to be able to build out more effective emails that are going to have a more consistent rendering across a larger number of email clients. A couple new things that I like that Litmus has released, and again, HighRoad's really not affiliated with Litmus. It's just, again, just one of the tools out there that a lot of carriers use, is they actually have a really cool tool, because one of the things which you're doing when you're testing is not only you wanting to understand how the email is going to look, but you also want to make sure your links are working properly. And so they actually have a link testing tool within their platform that basically overlays a heat map on top of the email and shows you which links are broken, eliminating the need for you to click through every individual link. So again, take advantage of that and take a look at that tool. One of the things that we really are trying to get a lot of organizations to look at, based on surveying we've done over our customer base and based on what's going on in the email marketing space, is making sure organizations are starting to look at how their emails look on mobile devices. Are you thinking about the experience, the user experience on a mobile device? This is really critical. If this is something that you're not currently doing, if there's one thing that you take away from our session today, please take this away, because this is very, very important. And I'm actually going to first build the argument in terms of why you should be looking into this, and then show you an effective way of going about it in terms of not having to use more time and energy to have yet a third version of your email. I'll show you a smarter way of going about doing that. So the first thing is you want to kind of look at devices that are used to actually open and view emails. When you look at statistical information that's available in the space, email marketing space, you'll see that, you know, Outlook is still the most used device. However, when you look at what's next, it's not Gmail, it's not Hotmail, it's actually iOS devices. So right now, it's the second leading device. Actually, current studies show that 40% of all email gets opened on mobile devices. Now, does that mean that people are doing that strictly on a mobile device? No. Most likely people are actually viewing the email on the desktop and the mobile, especially if you're away at conferences. A lot of times you'll go back and forth. But what's critical here is a significant portion of emails are consumed on mobile devices. And so that's why it's very important to understand what that experience is for the user on a mobile device. Another way of looking at this statistical information is you'll see here graphs, and each one, the blue represents desktops, and you can see that's on the decline. The green represents web-based email clients on the decline, and the orange at the bottom represents mobile devices, which is on the incline. So this is not going to do anything but increase more. So again, thinking about how your emails look on mobile devices, what the user's experience is on a mobile device, is really important. If we look at the mobile breakdown, you'll see that iOS devices still hold a significant share of that particular market space. But again, you can do this in a way where it doesn't matter what mobile device it's being consumed on. It can still be a pleasant experience for your members. One of the things that we asked our about 1,000 different organizations is, you know, what do you do when you get an email on a mobile device and it doesn't look good? 69% of people said they delete it. 18% say they unsubscribe. So again, just looking at the number of people that are viewing emails on mobile devices and combine that with what their expectations are, you definitely want to make sure that you're starting to think about this. And I actually have some of that information here, and I'll share that video with the interview in terms of the questions we asked. Okay, and you'll need to turn your speakers up to be able to hear this. Okay, I'm going to play it.
If I get an email on my mobile device, on my iPhone, that doesn't look good, I probably just delete it right away.
I delete it instantly.
Are we talking about physically, like the graphics, and if it's just a poorly constructed email?
If I get an email on my cell phone and it looks awful, I delete it before I read it.
Ditto. I'll just trash it.
If I get an email on my cell phone that doesn't look good, I usually just ignore it or delete it right away.
Delete.
Emails that come to my phone that aren't work-related, I delete them from my phone, but not necessarily from my email account, just so they're not on my phone. So then later on, when I'm on the computer, I'll go through, and whatever ones I do recognize, I'll either open, or if not, I delete them.
If it's messed up on my mobile phone, I don't even click on it, I just delete.
Great. So now that we see that there's a compelling reason of why we should be doing this, how do we go about doing this in a smart way? So the first thing that people think is, does that mean I have to build 2 versions of my emails? And actually possibly 3, because again, a lot of people are still supporting the text version. Actually, no. You don't have to maintain 2 versions of your emails. There's a movement in the space. It's something that's been going on for a long time with websites. It's actually called responsive design. And what it means is you're developing a template. It's a single template, but it's an intelligent template. And what it does is, based on the device it's being viewed on, it changes its configuration. What's really nice about this is there's not just desktops and mobile devices like iPhones and BlackBerries. There's also tablets, iPads, iPad minis. And so you're going to get the best experience for your email on any of those devices, as long as you make sure that your template itself is responsive. Okay, so how do you go about doing that? First of all, when we look at an email, the desktop experience, this is an example of a newsletter that an organization may send out. And again, you can see here, we kind of have our lead story, our header at the top. If we look at this email and the template itself is not responsive, you'll see that on a mobile device, we can still see the email because iPhones scale it. Actually, other mobile devices will not scale it. Some of them won't scale it, and it'll actually zoom in, and you'll kind of have to scroll around. So we can see the entire email here, but everything is very, very small. It's hard to read, and you're less likely as a recipient of the email to engage the email communication. Now, if you make that template responsive, same exact template, but this happens to have HTML code that's responsive, you'll notice that the text is larger, the picture is larger. And so now we're more likely to get that recipient of the email, the member, to actually engage even on their mobile device. And so when you compare these side by side, it's fairly obvious in terms of why that user experience is going to be better. On the left side, we have the responsive email. On the right side, we have the unresponsive email. So it's less about the design, even though there are design things you want to consider when you're looking at mobile devices. If you're going to a 3-column layout, that's a little bit more difficult to make responsive. Not impossible, but difficult. But really it has to do with the HTML code itself. So how does this work? Well, when you think about your email communications and your newsletters, there's really 2 components to them. There's the HTML, which is the content, and there's the CSS, which is the styling of the content. Okay? And with the new version of CSS, CSS3, it supports what we call the media query rule. And we basically have provided a list here of all the mobile devices that support the media query rule, and so you'll have access to that from the presentation. And basically, from a high level, it's fairly simple in terms of how this works. You basically have some inline CSS that gets applied to attributes or elements of the HTML when the width changes to a certain number of pixels, right? And so you can see here, the media query rule on the right is inserted in the HTML. And you can see on the far left the desktop experience and then the mobile experience. This is a more advanced template. you can see very quickly that not only did it make it not as wide, but we actually repositioned the picture relative to the story that it went with, and then the actual navigation at the bottom got re-navved up so that it works better on a mobile device. So there are some very complex things that you can apply when you're using these media query rules. If this is something that everyone who's attending would like to know more about, let us know, and we can actually conduct a very specific webinar on the details of how to make this work. So some general best practices that you want to think about is, number one, font size is important in terms of the mobile experience. You want to make sure that you're at a minimum using 13 pixel font size. And then the other thing that's very important is making sure you have touch-friendly buttons. Apple recommends a minimum target area of 44 by 44 pixels. And the other thing is you want to make sure you're using high contrast colors. And so, again, these are things that you can do today that's going to basically make the experience on mobile devices much, much better for your members and get them more engaged even from their mobile devices. So things that you should start doing right away. So I talked a little bit earlier about the demographic information that you can pull over from that form. How can you use a lot of this to kind of make your emails more effective? A lot of platforms support functionality that we refer to as dynamic content. There's different terminology in the market for it. But the key thing here is you can actually allow the demographics from that form to power the content within your email communications. And this can be very effective because, as I said earlier, that area above the fold is so critical. So if you already know something about your member, why not make that content above the fold dynamic based on what their specific interests may or may not be? So you can see here, I've got what looks like a merge tag or personalization tag. It's actually going to take an entire content block, so it's more like a full-blown dynamic content tag. And so we're going to send out a newsletter, and it's going to go out to basically two segments of our membership. One segment is people that we know their membership is about to expire. And another segment is people that have a high propensity of attending conferences because they've done that in the past. Okay, all information you can pull over very easily from that form. Now that we know that, we can use that to actually alter how we speak to each one of these segments of our membership more directly, again, above the fold. And so the idea here is for people whose membership is about to expire, the idea here is we wanted to put in a content block that let them know what it means to be a member. What this is right here is a member benefit. When they click on the Learn More, it's going to take them to the website, and it's going to also remind them that this is something that they can only purchase if they are a member. And again, reminding them to renew their membership, the benefits of being a member of this organization. In terms of the individuals that are really focused around attending conferences, well, they got a completely different lead story. So again, taking advantage of the segmentation being pulled over from that forum to send out more effective emails is really, really critical, and these are different ways you can take advantage of it. So one of the things that I get a question on a lot is, when is the best time to send an email? And I'm really hesitant to always answer this just because I prefer to get each one of our clients and people that I've worked with to test against their audience because every audience is different. But there are some general best practices, and there's an organization out there, another email service provider called GetResponse that's done a very, very detailed study. And so I'm going to share some of that information in terms of what they found and also what we found. One of the things that you've probably witnessed yourself as an organization, if you're really taking advantage of the analytics you have in your email platform, is the fact that, if someone doesn't open fairly soon when they receive an email, they're less likely to open. And studies show that basically 23% of all email opens occur within the first hour of delivery. It drops down to 9.52% in the second hour, down to 6%, and then down to 4% at the fourth hour. So at that point, you're less likely to get them to open the email. And why this is important is you want to send your email at a time that people are more likely to be in front of a computer. So one thing to look at is, let's say theoretically, again, we apply this idea that within the first hour someone's going to open an email, but we send the email out at 5 o'clock. Well, people are typically leaving work and commuting at that time. They'll get home and try to fix dinner. If they have a family, they have to prepare the kids, and so they're probably back online checking their emails at 8 o'clock. At this point, it's been about 4 hours, so you're less likely to get this person to open the email. So it's really important in terms of when you're sending out the email itself and making sure you choose a very good send time. When you look at send times, the majority of emails are sent in the morning. 38% of emails are sent from 6 a.m. to 12 noon. The afternoon is also a big time, and then back at 6 o'clock, 29%. So this is when most emails are sent. When you look at all this data and you kind of bring it together, the takeaways are this. You want to send emails when it's most likely that a member is going to be reviewing their inbox. And so for maximum open and click rates, choose the morning or early afternoon. Okay? Don't let your messages lose impact by waiting too long in the inbox. And if you're scheduling, schedule your emails to land in the inbox no later than 1 hour before top open times. So these are some key takeaways, general rules that you can use, but again, you want to test against your own particular audience. The other thing that you want to consider is the fact that you have time zones. And so if you have a membership that's across the domestic United States or international, you want to consider that, especially when you're scheduling out emails. A lot of platforms, the advanced email marketing platforms, support what we call rolling time zones. So what that means is if you want something to go out in the afternoon at 2 p.m., it will send it out 2 p.m. based on the recipient's location on the planet. And that's a feature we have in our platform and something that's really important, especially when you start to see the impact of send times. So one of the other things that's important is really kind of thinking about what impacts the ability of your email to get to the inbox. You've got this great looking message. You're leveraging demographics from that form to send out dynamic content. You've got a responsive design, but all that's for naught if the email can't make it to the recipient's inbox. And so there are a lot of things that impact that. Again, I'm going to cover from a high level some of the things you want to think about. This in itself could be a webinar, and we could spend a lot of time on it. So again, this is more of high level pieces. So a couple things that are obvious that people know is spam complaints. These are all impact your email reputation. Spam complaints are probably some of the most damaging things that can impact your email reputation, because it's basically recipients of your emails voting that you're a spammer, right? So when you pass certain thresholds, there is no turning back. There's nothing you can do about it, nor can an email service provider do that for you, right? Because it's individuals voting. And so one of the things that people always ask me is, buying third-party lists, is that okay? And from a legal perspective, can spam compliance? Yes, it's okay. From a deliverability perspective, I would say no, because if you send an email to me and I've never done business with you, I'm going to hit spam complaint. And if too many people do that, it tremendously damages your email reputation. But even beyond that, it's damaging your brand, right? Because now these recipients are actually seeing you as a spammer. So I am a big advocate of building your list organically in-house. And it's less about compliance and more about your email reputation. One of the things about spam complaints that's important is it's basically a threshold that's based on the percentage of your sending. So in other words, if you're sending an email to 100 people and you get 5 spam complaints, that's more damaging than if you sent an email to 100,000 people and you get 5 spam complaints. So it's all about a percentage of your whole sending population. Hard bounces, it's very important that your platform has what we call good list hygiene. It's fairly complex, but bounces based on who the ISP is, based on if it's a soft bounce or hard bounce, what the bounce code is, over time, those need to be cleaned from your list, and you need to stop sending to the bad email addresses. If you don't, again, that will damage your email reputation. Obviously, your content. Content has a big impact in terms of getting emails to the inbox. So you definitely want to be looking at what your subject line is, not using all caps, having some kind of functionality in your email platform that does a test and making sure that you're not using subject lines that are spammy. One of the other things that you want to look at are spam traps, or what we call honeypots. What those are basically, it's all about email address collection, right? The idea here is when you have some kind of process on your website or basically on your website, because members are going to be authenticated in. But if you're allowing people to opt in to receive emails from you, make sure you're using double opt-in. Reason being is, if you're not, what double opt-in is I go to your website, I want to opt in to receive emails. I put in the email address. I hit submit. It fires off an email to me for me to click on a link to confirm the opt-in. That way, you're able to validate I am the owner of the email address. If you're not doing that, it's what can happen is someone can actually go and maliciously add a honeypot or a bad email address to your sending database. That is can be very disruptive because what honeypots are, they are email addresses that are sitting on the internet on web pages that have been inactive. And what they're out there for are to catch spammers that harvest emails by using bots that farm the internet and look for these email addresses. And so an ISP knows that when someone sends an email to that they are a spammer. And so again, that's why it's very important to use double opt-ins. Honeypots are very dangerous too. I would put them up there with spam complaints. So these are different things that you need to be looking at that impact your email reputation. The other thing that's really important is making sure that you're using email authentication. What this is there are two big things that basically when you look at fraud that occur with email, spoofing and phishing. Spoofing is basically a sender with bad intention attempting to impersonate a trusted sender, right? Because you can go into any email platform and change the from address. So how does the recipient of the email know you are that organization? Well, the way they know is you set up email authentication, right? There are basically two popular protocols out there, DKIM and domain keys, and then SPF and sender ID. Why this is very important is it's actually impacting people's deliverability now. If you don't have these email authentication mechanisms set up, they're not difficult to set up, but if you don't have them set up, you're less likely to get your email to the recipient's inbox. So very important. The other thing to remember too is if you start working with a new email service provider and they give you your own dedicated IP address, which you should get, you need to make sure you're warming that IP up. Right? Because an IP address, a new one, is just like me having credit for the first time. I don't have bad credit, but I don't have good credit. So you want to warm that IP up before you start blasting a huge number of emails across it. And so just things to think about when you are looking at your deliverability. The other important piece of deliverability that a lot of people are not aware of is if someone does not engage in your email, meaning open it or click on anything for a long period of time, that actually can start to potentially impact your ability to get a message delivered to them, right? So I highly recommend using what I call lifecycle messaging campaigns. These are automated campaigns. There's a popular one out called win-back campaigns. And what these are out-of-the-box blueprints in terms of, okay, we're going to take our inactive members, people that haven't been engaging our emails, and offer them a series of offers to get them to engage back in our communications, okay? And as soon as they do, they become what we call a responder, and they go back into your normal daily or weekly or monthly sending. If they don't, after a sequence of, let's say, 3 emails, you put them into a non-responder segment, and you filter them from future sends, right? Because they haven't engaged, and again, past certain thresholds, your ISPs may actually start to impact your deliverability because you're sending emails to people that aren't engaging. So again, something you want to start to think about. So one of the things to also think about is the member's experience in terms of when they're receiving emails, how they're consuming those messages. And the nice thing about being an email marketer is that we all are also recipients of emails. However, when we put our email marketing caps on, sometimes we forget that, right? So just think about, put yourself in the member's shoes in terms of what their experience you want it to be, right, in terms of what you would expect. And so the first thing is these things happen kind of within milliseconds, but there is a very specific way that emails are consumed by a recipient. The first thing is when you receive an email, you instantly recognize the sender name, okay? If it's something that you don't recognize, a brand you don't recognize, you're less likely to, engage the email at all. So being consistent with your sender name, being very direct and honest about your sender name is very important in terms of brand recognition. The next thing is once you've passed that piece, then we look at the subject line. So having a good subject lines, and I'll talk a little bit about what's possibly a good subject line. Definitely when you're testing, this is something you should A/B test because subject lines do make a difference. They really do. And so A/B testing this, what's beautiful about email marketing, it's not subjective. You can methodically test scientifically against your audience and isolate what works best for your organization. Then the next thing is a lot of email clients default to having a preview pane area, and so they're going to see part of the email there. Again, that's why that area above the fold is so important, making sure that you have something that is compelling above the fold, and then hopefully they read the entire email or a lot of the email and then click through, get back to your website, and get more engaged in the organization. So that's kind of the steps in terms of how the email is consumed. So when you're looking at your email message, you can break it down in terms of the sender name, the subject line. I'll talk a little bit about pre-headers because when it comes to mobile, those are more and more important. Logo and navigation. There's a new concept out now called the hero image, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And then the other thing is you want to have social sharing icons within your emails. I'll talk about the value of that, and then the footer, which will have the update or opt-out links. So pre-headers. Pre-headers is a term that the email space uses. It's something that people have been using for a long time, but officially now we call it pre-headers. And so what a pre-header is something you're probably already familiar with. A lot of times what you want to do when you're pre-header is have something like, if you can't view this email properly here, click here to view online, a web version of it. Or make sure you add our from address to your address book. And those are all still good pre-headers, right? Because you want your members to add your from address to the address book because, number one, it actually basically guarantees the message goes to the inbox, not the spam folder. Number two, with email clients that have image blocking on, it will actually automatically load those images if you're in the address book normally. The other thing is the email authentication with the sender ID. If you have that set up, that also may automatically load your images instead of blocking them. So things to think about there. But when it comes to pre-headers, you also want to think about mobile devices because one of the things about pre-headers is they show up as the preview of the email on a mobile device. So another way of maybe doing your pre-header would be is putting some kind of promotional offer there, right? Because that's what's going to show up if I open this on a mobile device as the kind of the preview piece. So again, understanding how pre-headers are used by devices allows you to kind of change this and make this a little bit more versatile. Okay. You also can use responsive design to hide the pre-header on the desktop, but it only shows up on the mobile. So a lot of different ways you can take advantage of that. The sender from name, this piece you can change. It's the alias that sits on top of the from address. So you can see here Adobe Max is the sender from name. The from email address is behind that. And so it's the from email address that you want to make consistent. I would keep the sender from name consistent too, but if I know some organizations like to change that a little bit, so you have some flexibility there. But this is the part that we say is the brand, right? This is what me as a recipient of your emails, I'm going to recognize or not recognize, and it's going to put the brakes on things right away if I don't recognize it. So the key thing here is you want to use sender from names that are clear, direct, to the point, and honest. Things that aren't, they look spammy. You can see on the left here, bad sender from names, right? So, they look spammy in the inbox. The good ones here are very direct. They're basically the organizational name. And studies here say that 73% click report spam based on the from line. Again, clicking on that report spam is each individual recipient voting that you're a spammer and you don't want to be in that position. 56% cited knowing and trusting the sender as a reason to open. So again, trust is really important when you're communicating with your members. Subject lines. On the left, we have subject lines that got the better open rates, and on the right, we have subject lines that got the worst open rates. And you'll see that the ones on the right are more, you would think, compelling, more salesy, more provocative. The ones on the left are kind of boring, right? They're kind of boring, but they performed better, right? Because they're more direct and in correlation of what the email is about. You can see here that newsletters perform fairly well, so basically saying that in your subject line is a good thing. So that's great for member-driven organizations because to members you're sending out a lot of newsletters. So it's simple. Subject line should describe the subject of your email. You can get too fancy with subject lines. Like I said, though, each audience is different, so testing against your audience is very, very important. Hero image. This is kind of a new concept in terms of web design and also emails. And the key thing here is basically reducing the amount of text that you have at the top of the email and being able to convey more through the actual image. So the idea is basically the hero image is show, don't tell. What you're trying to do is create a visceral experience that conveys your brand, right, through the actual image itself. And, so like for a clothing designer, that might be you want to convey confidence and happiness. So you can do that through an image. And the idea here is you might have some words, that position your organization, but the idea that is the image is going to carry most of the load in terms of what you're trying to convey in the email. So an idea here in terms of, something you can take away, but it's a big move in the space in terms of, producing what we call a hero image at the top of the email. Social sharing. There's a lot of talk about social and email. They're not competing technologies. They're actually technologies that work very, very well with each other, right? Because if you have a social platform, you have to drive people to it. The best way to do that is through email. And then vice versa. Email itself, you want to allow your emails to be social, meaning you want your members to be able to socially share this content. So when you think about this, let's say you're sending out an email to your membership and you have 10,000 members. Wouldn't it be great is if you could enable each one of those individual members to be a social influencer, evangelist on behalf of your organization, right? That's what social sharing is all about. It's about allowing each one of your members to be evangelists on part of your organization. So the idea here is in any email that we send out, we always want to put some social icons. For our platform, what we're doing here is this isn't going to take the individual to Facebook or Twitter. What it's going to do is allow the member to share your content on their Facebook or Twitter or any social platform they choose to. When you're launching the email as the marketer, you control the message. You're controlling the actual message that's going to appear on the social platform. So the title and also the description, and whether this title is a link to some web page that you have or microsite, or if it's a link to the email that you're sending out. So again, the key thing here is as the marketer, you're controlling the message. When the member receives the email and they click on those social icons, they can choose from quite a few different social platforms that we work with. And so if they choose Facebook, it'll check to see if they're logged into Facebook. If they are logged into Facebook, it'll allow them not only to post the content that you as the marketer controlled, they can also add some additional commentary to it, like we'll see at the conference. And then basically on their Facebook wall, now all their colleagues can see your content and also a link to the email that you sent out. So again, making sure that you put your members in a position to be your social evangelizers, right? Very, very powerful, especially when you're sending out something to a large audience of people. Now the idea here is if your members are being social evangelizers, you want to be able to isolate who those people are and also reward that behavior because you want to encourage it. And so the first thing is identifying who your social influencers are. Again, back to what we talked about earlier, lifecycle messaging campaigns. Again, these are automated campaign sequences that you can set up that say, okay, based on social data that we're capturing through the email analytics, I want to reward these individuals. So anyone that has shared content on these social platforms this number of times, I want to send them some kind of promotional offer. And again, you can have a sequence of emails that go out as these individuals do more sharing on behalf of your organization. So in this case, maybe we send them something small like a Starbucks gift card. But again, rewarding the behavior because we want to encourage it. And in any email that you send out, you definitely want to have these social sharing icons within them. So now we've sent out the email. We've gotten it to the inbox because we're adhering to some of the best practices in terms of deliverability. We've got our members social sharing. We're rewarding that behavior. The other thing, again, when they receive the email is we have to allow the recipient of the email to globally opt out of email marketing if they choose to from our organization. The idea here is, that's what canned spam compliance is all about. I have seen some organizations, when we look at email marketing, I would definitely separate email marketing from transactional. Transactional emails are emails that someone went to your website, they purchased something, or they registered for an event, like let's say you registered for this event and we sent you a confirmation. Those are transactional, right? Those don't have to adhere to canned spam compliance. You can always send those emails out. But anything that's not that, I would treat as an email marketing message, okay? So in the footer, again, updating the profile, manage the subscriptions, opting out, whatever the language you want to have there. When they click on that, it's going to bring up their email preference center. Again, this is really critical that this is integrated back with NetForum for various reasons. One is you want to own your data. If you want to move between carriers, whether it's a social platform, an email platform, a learning system, you want to own your data. So making sure that data is in NetForum so that you can use whatever tool you want to is important. And also, the idea here is you want to leverage these communication preferences for other message mediums. So when the preference page comes up, again, we're pulling the data directly from NetForum, loading the preferences. One of the great things about this is we know something about the member before the page comes up, right? So we can do dynamic things on these preference pages. So for example, with this organization, they have what they call leaders. And when you become a leader, there are certain communications that you have to get. And so that's what this is doing is when someone comes to the preference center, we're checking the database, we're finding out something about the particular member. If they are part of a chapter, or in this case a leader, we let them know you can change your communication preferences, but these communications you can't remove yourself from unless you contact our member services and let us know that you no longer want to be a leader. So again, having these dynamic preferences is really a key thing in terms of interacting directly with NetForum. It's a great way of having this dynamic preference center. With preference centers, obviously you want to think about giving, what your communication options are going to be here. I'm a big fan of less is more, but, each organization's different. The key thing here is in NetForum, we're writing, in our case, that back to mailing lists. Mailing lists are very, very flexible in NetForum, so you can create new ones. You can put dates on them. You can actually have multiple email addresses. So, you can actually, as a member, have a personal and a work and say, I want these communications to my personal. I want these communications to my work. So NetForum is very flexible in this way. So good things to take advantage of there, giving your members more options. The global opt-out, what we do is when someone globally opts out, we'll indate all the mailing lists, but in addition to that, we update the do not contact by email flag. That represents the global opt-out. NetForum reporting, again, getting that information from the email platform back into NetForum is really important. From a social CRM side, it's going to allow you to put scoring on all these interactions and be able to quickly see, how engaged, truly engaged a member is. So getting reporting data back from any of your systems, getting any data back from any of the peripheral technology systems you use back into NetForum is really critical because you want to score these interactions, right? Whether, again, you probably wouldn't score someone opening an email as much as someone attending a live conference, but again, you want to have all these touch points with your members back into NetForum. So those are the big things I wanted to cover. Again, responsive is really critical. That's a key takeaway. If you can take advantage of some of the things I talked about with dynamic content and something that's not complex to set up, but the sender ID and DKIM, those are big things that you can actually use to improve your email marketing program immediately. All right, well, I think we'll open it up to questions now.
Yeah, thank you, Ron. We are now ready for the Q&A segment of the seminar today, or webinar. We did get a question already. Please, if you have additional questions, please put those in the Q&A pod. The panel to enter those questions is in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. The question that came in, is it simply inserting the HTML code you showed into the email HTML? Or is there more that you did not show? I know that was earlier in the presentation.
In terms of
in regards to responsive design.
Yeah, so it's not as simple as that, right? That's basically the building block. However, there's additional CSS that has to be in there that interacts with it. So it's not as simple as that, but at a high level, that's the main kind of piece that makes the whole thing work. And we have a document on it. If you would like us to share that, just reach out to us. Our contact info is here, but we have a great document on all the intimate details of how to set up responsive templates.
Okay, great. We did get a question if you would be sharing your PowerPoint today. I want to let folks know that we did record the webinar today, and it will be made available through the Avectra website. But Ron, I'm sure that you could also provide people with a copy of your slides.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So we got another question. How can I integrate mailing lists from my mailing system into NetForum?
From the email, I think it's from the email system you're using. So the way we do it is through XWeb. And so it's the XWeb and NetForum is very, very powerful, very flexible. So it's just a matter of if you have a developer, if you're a developer, making sure that you have a clear understanding of how to consume XWeb and some of the data structures in NetForum. But that data is easily accessible in terms of, pulling data out and actually writing data back. Everything's done through what they call facade objects when you're using XWeb. So you do have to have some knowledge of it. But that is actually something that any organization can do as long as you have the proper resources, and obviously you have to have an XWeb license with Avectra.
Okay. There was another question. Can an email preference center appear different for members and non-members, and if so, how does that work?
So that's a great question, and that is a great use case that we do for a lot of clients. And the way it works is basically we're communicating with NetForum, and we check to see if the person who's coming to the page is a member or not. And based on that information, we're dynamically generating the preference page. And so it's something that's dynamically happening as the preference page comes up by making some calls into XWeb and doing some, programming on the back office in terms of the web page itself.
Okay. So are there any other questions? We've gone through everything in the Q&A panel. If you do have additional questions, I encourage you to add those to the Q&A pod. We'll wait a few more minutes and see if anything else comes in. It doesn't look like it. We did get some feedback already that it was a great session, and I would agree, Ron. I think we always learn something through your presentations, and just want to thank you, and thank you to everybody who joined us today. Have a great day.